there's nothing quite like local. So at AARP, we connect people to what matters most in the places they call home, with experiences made especially for your community, brought to you by those who know you, your neighbors. Wherever you live, we're here to help your money, health, and happiness live as long as you do. Connect with us today at aarp.org/local.
In 2003, a documentary radio producer had a crazy idea. Let's record the stories of thousands. Let's make it millions of people to hear firsthand what it really means to be human. Soon, starting with a single recording booth in Grand Central Terminal, StoryCorps was born. And the stories started coming. Stories about hope. Stories about courage. Stories about love. Stories about us. People recalled the pivotal moments in their lives and how they managed to persevere even when the world didn't seem to want them to. And since this simple idea took root, we've captured nearly 700,000 voices, telling stories that have been heard by hundreds of millions of people. We've built the largest single collection of voices the world has ever known. But the story of StoryCorps is just beginning, because our next chapter is all about spreading the power of our stories to rewrite the narrative of our country, to bridge divides, heal communities, strengthen families, and create a world where you don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to be rich to enrich others. You don't need to be a leader to lead us toward a more connected and compassionate society. You just need to be human. StoryCorps helps us believe in each other by illuminating the humanity and possibility in us all, one story at a time. Thank you for being part of our story.
Hello, I am Brenda Price, the Associate State Director at AARP Michigan. It is a pleasure to host this program today. The program is about mentorship and allyship with a unique focus on the LGBTQ plus community. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most for the more than 100 million Americans age 50 plus and their families. And those issues are health, security, financial security, stability, and personal fulfillment, and more. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publication, AARP the Magazine, and AARP the Bulletin. Over the next hour, we'll be guiding you as we listen to stories from the LGBTQ community and celebrate the roles of allies and mentors in our lives. Storytelling is a powerful tool. Join AARP Michigan as we listen to and celebrate personal stories from the StoryCorps OutLoud initiative dedicated to documenting and amplifying stories from the LGBTQ plus community. This event features voices of hope and resilience while providing insights on the value of mentorship and allyship across generations. We'll hear from local advocates from the community and the StoryCorps team. During our live event, you will be able to chat with our attendees. If you are joining us on a desktop or a laptop computer, you'll find a chat box to the right of your screen. If you are viewing on a mobile device, click that chat box button below the video player to expand this section. Additionally, we'll have some educational and resource information for you later to see. So what we'd like you to do is please share in the chat box where you're joining us from, what city, what country. We'd like to know. We'd also like to know what brought you joy this week. What brought you joy this morning? For me, it's just rising to a new day of the bright sunshine. I am in Michigan and the sun is shining bright, and I am going to go out and rejoice in it later today. So be sure to post in the chat where you are from. So as we get started, we are going to listen to a StoryCorps story to kick off this event. So sit back and enjoy.
So I start with my name and all that stuff. Okay, we'll see how it works. Hello, my name is Jerry Nadeau. I'm with John Banvard.
And I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
No. You got to say your name and everything. Hello, my name is...
Hello, my name is John Banvard. I am 100 years of age.
When I first met you, John, you were 75 years old. What would it have been like if you didn't meet me?
I would have continued being lonely. I'd been absolutely lost.
When we met, we were sort of in the closet.
Yeah.
And I never had a real relationship. Now we've been together almost 25 years. And when we moved into the veterans home, we moved in together. And a lot of people were wondering, I wonder what their relationship is. Yes. Well, when we got married, they knew what our relationship was.
I was expecting we'd be ridiculed, and there was very little of that.
We got married at the veterans home, and we said, if you came to see the bride, you're out of luck. Do you remember that?
Yes, of course.
It was very informal.
It was done simply, yes.
We served hot dogs.
Which is hardly wedding food.
Remember, John, I was with you in a cafeteria, and somebody came up, and they were with their family, and they said, oh, this is Gerard Nadeau, and this is his husband, John. I never heard that before.
Yeah, that was very nice.
You've made my life complete.
I could say the same thing to you. I think we're probably as happy together as any two people you're likely to meet.
I'd like to introduce you to our host today, Emily Jansen, the Director of Learning and Engagement at StoryCorps, and Tamikia Jackson, National Facilitator at StoryCorps. Welcome, Emily and Tamikia.
Oh, thank you, Brenda, for welcoming us into this space together. I want a little bit of your Detroit sunshine. Thank you to everyone at AARP Michigan for hosting this event and introducing us to your community. And good morning and welcome to everyone here. Thank you for joining us as we get ready to share and celebrate stories from the LGBTQ plus community from Michigan and throughout the country.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Over the next hour, we'll guide you through stories from the LGBTQ plus community, and we'll celebrate the roles allies and mentors play in our lives.
Brenda invited us all a moment ago to share where you're joining from and what is something that brought you joy this morning, this week, this season. What has been bringing you joy, Tamikia?
What has been bringing me joy is just spending time with my daughter. She is 7 years old and she is learning to read, putting the pieces together, which is a unique thing to see happen. And that just makes me light up. How about you, Emily?
That's so exciting. Well, today is the birthday of a very, very special person in my life. And so I have been loving every moment of this morning, watching people just send her so much joy and appreciation and birthday wishes in phone calls, in emails and social media. And it just feels good to see someone be so appreciated for who they are.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And everyone here, thank you for being with us and talking with us so that we can see you and know that you're here. You're all sharing so much wonderful joy. I'm experiencing it sort of through you. People have been experiencing sunshine as they travel and have talked about the joy of visiting Mother Ocean, setting up Christmas trees, listening to stories, the stories that we started to share today. And congratulations to Mary, who just finished the first semester of your master's program this week.
That feels good. I know that feeling. It feels good.
Yes, there's lots of joy for us to celebrate together. So I hope and invite you all to keep using that chat to talk with one another, to talk with us, and just share your responses and reactions throughout this event. Coming together brings us so much joy, and knowing that we're able to connect in your local community and sometimes with new folks from all across the country. So again, please just keep sharing with us, keep getting to know one another. And Tamikia, I'll pass it on to you to share a little bit more about the story of StoryCorps. Who are we and what have we been doing for the past 20 years?
Absolutely. I'm so happy to do that, Emily. StoryCorps is a national nonprofit organization. We began in 2003 with an idea and a recording booth. The idea was to document the voices and stories of people from all walks of life. Our first recording booth was in New York City, which you can see here. Nestled in the corner of Grand Central Terminal, our booth was a quiet place where people could sit down with loved ones to have a conversation about their lives and preserve their memories for future generations. Well, it has been 20 years and that idea is still the same. You can bring anyone you want to StoryCorps and honor them with a conversation. This could be your partner, parent, grandfather, a childhood friend, or a person that you just want to get to know better. Since that original booth in New York City, we've traveled the country and set up recording booths in other cities along the way. We also traveled from state to state with a mobile recording booth to record and archive stories in communities large and small. In fact, our Airstream trailer has visited Michigan 9 times, stopping in Kalamazoo, Flint, Detroit, Ann Arbor, Marquette, and Grand Rapids. Even if you're not in one of the towns StoryCorps is visiting, you can record and archive a conversation from wherever you are by using our app and online platform. These tools are free and available to use, and really handy as people kind of move away from home during this time. No matter where you record, a StoryCorps conversation offers a quiet, reflective space to share 40 minutes of uninterrupted time with a loved one, asking important questions and listening. I have facilitated many of these conversations, and there's always something magical about them. With permission, we share these recordings with the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., so that future generations can listen and learn from them. The StoryCorps archive has grown to include over 640,000 participants, and it's the largest single collection of human voices ever gathered. Maybe you've heard of us on National Public Radio, where every Friday morning we showcase one of the stories from our archive. We also produce short animations of stories to share on public television and in classrooms across the country, and they're also available to watch on social media. Here's a little glimpse of the people who have recorded and shared their stories with us.
I just start by asking you one of the questions on my list, right?
Anything you want.
Okay.
Do you remember what it was like when we were 19 and totally in love?
When did you and Dad decide to adopt?
Do you have any regrets, Grandpa?
What else? Hurry, I'm gonna go home.
Collecting stories from the LGBTQ plus community has long been a priority for StoryCorps. In 2014, on the 45th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, we officially launched StoryCorps OutLoud, an initiative to record and preserve LGBTQ plus stories from across the United States. We do this in recognition of the profound historical importance of these community stories and the urgent need to continue to document and share them now and for generations to come. Through listening together, we hope to pay tribute to these storytellers, their voices, and their experiences. All of the stories that we're sharing today are from StoryCorps OutLoud collection, so let's listen to another one of those stories together now. In this animation, we hear from Joseph Patton. He joined the U.S. Navy in 1956 and was given an undesirable discharge because of the assumption that he was gay. Let's listen to his story now.
my dad told me going into service would help me be a man, but I chose the Navy because I liked the uniforms. They were tight and cute with bell bottoms. Lord have mercy. I was exploring my sexuality, but you could not be gay in the service at that time. There was a group of us that hung out together. We drank together, we played cards, we became friends. But when these two guys told the commanders they were lovers, everybody that were close friends with those guys was arrested, and I was kicked out of the service for being friends with the homosexual. They gave me an undesirable discharge. That was the worst time of my life. To be in the service for my country is the greatest thing I thought I did. I was a perfect sailor. I did my job very well. So that whole period is almost like a dream. A lot of it I didn't want to think about because it hurt so much. And I was so ashamed. But, I can't live in the past. Love has no limits in my life. And love surprises me all the time. I'm 81 years old, but sometimes I get up and dance. I shake my ass with life. Yes. And I'm blessed that I can feel like that.
Oh, it's such a great opportunity to be able to listen to stories like Joseph's. So remember, I asked earlier to continue chatting, so I'm going to ask you again and ask you to reflect. What does it feel like for you to hear Joseph's story? And I'm going to ask the big question now, the sort of the why of StoryCorps and the why of us coming together. Why do stories matter? Why does Joseph's story matter? Why do we come together in spaces like this to share and listen together? Why is that so important for us to do? So I would just love to hear what you all have to say about that, and we'll come back to it a little bit later, because we have more stories that we want to play for you. We would want to share with you our collection all day long, and we had to just choose a selection. And Tamika, I know you have a couple on deck for us.
I absolutely do, Emily. I'm also really curious to hear from the audience the answer to that question. At StoryCorps, people come together to share stories about what matters most to them. And this includes the people who have made an impact on who they are and who they have become. These could be parents, grandparents, and other people we traditionally talk about as family. But it also includes friends, allies, and mentors who share wisdom, advice, and friendship as we navigate life's challenges. This is particularly true as LGBTQ plus folks of all ages look back at their lives and how they navigated safety and acceptance as they've aged, and how they've also become mentors for others, sharing their own history and wisdom for the next generations. In a moment, we'll hear from local Detroit community activist and leader Cornelius Wilson and his mentee, Anthony Whitfield, who will reflect together on the significance of their intergenerational connection. But first, before we hear from them, I want to share two more stories where we hear about the power of individuals who accept and support us. First up, we'll hear from Dee Westenhauser, who recalls her aunt and mentor, Yaya. At the age of 83, Dee came out as transgender. When she was growing up in the 1950s in El Paso, she had a hard time fitting in. One weekend, her parents decided to take her to her Aunt Yaya's house. Aunt Yaya saw a kindred spirit in Dee and gave her the loving opportunity to be herself. Then we will hear from David Wilson, who was a plaintiff in the 2004 court decision that provided marriage equality for same-sex couples in Massachusetts. David's journey to that landmark case started 10 years earlier when he lost his first partner, Ron Loso. As David navigated his journey, the support of one ally in his life made all the difference. Let's listen to these stories.
If you were to see Aunt Yaya back in the day the way I saw her, she was tall. She had a beautiful angular face with high cheekbones, and she had brown eyes. They almost looked like owl eyes, scanning everything. And the way she walked around her room would tell you she held herself in high regard. One weekend, my mom and my dad, they decided that I was going to go to Aunt Yaya's house. I was 9 years old. And once the door closed, she says, "How would you like to change into something that's really comfortable for you?" And what was there were a blouse and a wig. I knew I was a girl. And so that weekend, I got to be me. We went shopping in my outfits. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Yaya, and she would introduce me as her niece.
Would you go home and mention anything like that?
No. She said, when you go home, you have to be what they want. Because if you don't, and they find you out, you will be hurt. She was the one who taught me early on that I have to play the game. Yaya, she had a lifelong friend. And it wasn't until years later that I finally figured out that her friend was her lover and her partner. And you never spoke of that back in the day. Yaya never got the love she was supposed to from the rest of the family. And Yaya wanted me to be everything that she wanted to be if she could live her life over again. She gave me pearls of wisdom. You could string a necklace to the moon and back with everything that she would share. I loved her. She loved me back. And behind that white door became my place to be the little girl that I needed to be.
EMTs arrived within minutes, and they called the police because they saw me standing in the driveway, an African-American man in a white neighborhood. And when the police arrived, they wanted to arrest me for assault and battery and breaking and entering. And when I got to the hospital, I found out that they were not going to give me any information because I had no relationship to Ron. As far as they were concerned, I was a stranger. They called Ron's family in Vermont and said, "Can you give permission for us to talk to David?" And his 75-year-old mom said, "Of course, they're partners." So they came out and they said that he was dead on arrival. My whole world just kind of fell apart and I felt pretty broken. Where do I go from here? So I joined a support group. One meeting in walked a man. That man's name was Rob Compton. 3 years later, we had a commitment ceremony. Lots of people came and they thought it was our wedding. And we said, no, this isn't a wedding because we don't have the right to get married. So it was amazing to become a plaintiff in a major lawsuit against the state of Massachusetts. Part of the decision to be part of the case was to talk with my family. My dad wasn't sure. All of a sudden, his only son is going to become this prominent out gay black man. So I talked with Dad about some of the issues. A couple hours later, Dad said, "You're doing the right thing." May 17th, 2004 was the first weddings. Dad said, "Well, you're going to City Hall and you're going to be part of all of this excitement. What about me?" I said, "Dad, I'm sending a limo to pick you up." My dad had never been in a limo. He got a new suit, came down, and limo took him down, and he was in the front row, and when we walked down the aisle, both his arms were in the air. He was 89 at that point. And he didn't see it just for gay people. He saw it for, all people that had been discriminated against. And his whole life he had been discriminated against. So I think for Dad, it was just a victory that he could be a part of. He could not have been more proud. It was a great day.
Wow. Right? What beautiful stories to witness and to listen to be brought into those experiences and those moments, of connection. That was really amazing. Now that we've listened, we would love to hear more from you. Let us know who have been the mentors and allies in your life. Maybe it was a family member or a friend, maybe a teacher or a partner. Feel free to write their first name only in the chat if you feel comfortable. Emily, who's been a mentor and ally to you?
Tamika, we've been thinking and talking about this a lot since we've been bringing this event together. And I have been thinking so much about my dear friend and mentor, Tracy, who was first just a coworker that I worked with when my very first big job. And I didn't know what was happening. I was 20 years old. And she sort of took me under her wing as someone who had been working in the community much longer than I had. And that sustained us. That was decades ago at this point. And since then, she has been a professional mentor to me, but also just a personal connection. And I've watched her son grow up and feel like I now have been able to play a part in his life as well in the next generation. What about you, Tamika?
Well, I am going to say my sister, Lawanda, she's my older sister, which I think is important, but she has always seen and spoken to parts of me that I did not necessarily know were there. She's been my greatest cheerleader and always there through my entire life. I think one of the weird things when we were younger, people thought we were friends and not sisters because we were such good friends, but I'm lucky to have her.
I love that. I love that so much. And I'm seeing people talk about this too in the chat and hope, as you might think about who those allies have been to you, those friends, those mentors, those connections, you can continue to share those. I'm seeing talk about teachers, other allies, and naming some beautiful names here. People who I see, someone naming Cornelius. I think this Cornelius, even who we're about to hear from, as a great mentor. And so I just want us to all keep holding those people in our minds. And we know this is what, Tamika, when you at StoryCorps sit down and listen to and help people record and archive their stories, these are often the people that you're seeing come together who have this type of connection. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it is they're parallel relationships, but a lot of times we see a lot of mentors and mentees and people who are able to reflect on how someone has grown. I actually think one of my favorites, and I recorded this one, I don't think we've turned it into an edited story yet, but it was the relationship between a cheer coach and a student that she mentored in high school while she was going through along her trans journey, which was just a really beautiful story. I'm going to be so excited when that one comes out.
I love that. Thank you for that tease. There are as you're saying, our archive is full of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people's voices in there. So you can dig in and hear a lot of those examples. So as we said before, we are going to get to see a couple of folks who have had this relationship with one another. And so as you continue to talk with one another and share with us, Brenda, I invite you back so you can introduce us to Cornelius and Anthony.
Thank you, Emily and Tamikia. AARP is a proud ally with the LGBTQ community plus. If you go to aarp.org and put LGBTQ plus in the search engine, you will see articles on health, finance, caregiving, and other topics that are important to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. Additionally, on this page, you will find the results of an AARP-sponsored survey within the Black LGBTQ community. I encourage you to check out the page at aarp.org to get more information. It's constantly updated. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Cornelius Wilson. You've heard his name previously. Cornelius is the Chief Engagement Officer of Michigan LGBTQ Plus Elders Network, or MyGen, and a valuable AARP volunteer. We work together on quite a few events in the Detroit area. Cornelius is a mentor and an advocate in our community, helping and supporting people for many years. Can't say enough about him. Along with Cornelius, joining us today is Anthony Whitfield. Anthony is a young brother who is writing his story as he goes. His journey is just climbing higher and higher. Along with Cornelius, the two will talk about their relationship. And it's just a wonderful story to hear. Anthony credits Cornelius with a lot of his success in putting him on the right pathway. He says he gave him good advice and tough love. And you can't do better than that. Cornelius supports Anthony in all that he does and has been instrumental in helping him to turn his life around. This is what we talk about when we're talking about mentorship and mentees. So let's listen as they share their beautiful story and their relationship here. Thank you. Cornelius?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cornelius Wilson, and this is my friend and mentee, Mr. Anthony Whitfield. And I'm going to let Anthony introduce himself, since you all have heard enough about me.
How you doing today? My name is Anthony Whitfield. I want to keep with the trend, and I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And one thing that has brought me joy this week was being invited here to share my time and my thoughts with wonderful, enthusiastic peers as yourself here today.
Great. So we're going to have just like a little dialogue here between the two of us, something that we kind of do quite often anyway. But for this purposes, I'm going to ask Anthony, why aren't more of his peers involved in advocacy work?
Well, honestly, I believe that it's a calling. This work is not for everybody. I mean, and I want to contradict myself and say it is for everybody because I feel everybody plays a part and a role in it. I believe that it is something that you cannot teach. That has to come from inside of you. So in that sense, I believe that everybody does their own advocacy work. It depends. It just depends on the person. And for me, myself, I enjoy it. What about you, Mr. Wilson? Would you like to share more about, would you like to share more about the mentorship and allies and the important role that they play?
Well, for me, I think both are important. I had a mentor who was a coworker when I first started working in this arena. Didn't recognize him as a mentor. We were just coworkers, but he was the first Black man who was as out and as open and still himself as a masculine man. Mm-hmm. And just working with him and watching how he was interacting with, it was part of an organization that was up and coming, and watching how he interacted and moved the organization to where it ended up being, which is the organization still exists. it made me feel real proud to be a Black man who could accept the fact that my lifestyle was different.
Okay.
What about yourself? As we're talking about mentors and allies, what is it that you think would encourage your peers to be more involved in allyship and or mentorship?
I believe that it would be more outreach, an invitation to be involved, some type of word to get out so that they understand that this work not only is necessary but important, so that they can find a connection within this particular arena, being an ally and mentorship, to find a way to see how they can help and which role that they can play inside of this arena, if you will.
Yeah, I find that allyship and or mentorship, and I'll lean more towards mentorship. Allyship is also there, but I find that that's something that is absolutely necessary between youth and elders. And I say youth with regards to anybody that's younger than me, and I say elders as anybody that's older than me. But what I mean by that is that because I feel we can all learn from each other, you know, particularly in this day and time, you know, with the new technology and what have you. Folks like yourself and your peers, you all grew up with this technology. So this is all you know, and this is what we need to learn. And folks like myself, we came along before this technology, and we have a lot of old school ideas, and some of us are really trying to hold on to that. Not me, but there are things that we need to let go, and the best way to learn it is learning from folks who it is a part of, rather than try and squeeze something in that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Who has been, no, let me ask you this. Would you share more on what the journey of mentorship has been with me?
I believe that it's been heaven sent. Now, this part right here is near and dear to my heart because I could talk forever on this particular subject. I don't believe that I would be the man that I am today had it not been for me not running into you and you allowing yourself to be open to lead me and guide me and helped to redirect me into the path that would be most successful. I credit a lot of my success and a lot of my thoughts and a lot of my energy of wanting to continue on the right path to the efforts that you've poured into me. I am so grateful that this particular experience has been the way it is, because at first I had a hard time accepting this particular report because it was completely different from the way that I thought. It was completely different from what I had experienced before, and I never had a male role model in my life that took the time to help me understand, that took the time to listen to my issues, that took the time to give me unadulterated, unscripted, real advice. And I cherish that. And I think that is a piece that if I ever was to do advocacy work, that I could use to help me stay along the course when it gets time, when the times get hard, or people feel like they won't listen, or they're just hard headed. So good.
Well, I'm glad I was able to offer some help there. You know, for me with you, you know, as part of the LGBT community, being a gay man, I've always had the thoughts and ideas about what it would be like raising children. And being able to offer some advice and guidance to young brothers like yourself, young women as they come along and are open to it, you know, gives me that paternal feeling where I may not have biological children, but I got a whole bunch of children, grown and otherwise. And you know, I learned from you all, you know, and I can only hope that you all take what you can from me, and that gives you some direction.
And in a sense of it, it will also help understand that you'll always live forever, because a piece of me, a piece of you has been inscripted into a piece of me, and I can give that piece to other people, and hopefully it'll help them the same way that it helped me. So,
well, thanks a lot, Anthony. I appreciate that. Sometimes it gets a bit nauseating, you know,
stressful
to keep hearing about, you know, different things. But, you know, I'm here today and now doing what I do. And the best thing I can do, offer you advice-wise, is to follow my example. Watch my actions. Action speaks louder than words.
And I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to invite me here to share this particular moment and experience with all of you and with you as well. I wouldn't have had it any other way. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. I guess we're going to be getting back to some of the other StoryCorps and OutLoud stories.
Thank you, Cornelius and Anthony. That was just fabulous, my brothers. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed all of it. It was so heartfelt. We really appreciate you. And as I said earlier, I learned a lot too working with Cornelius and really appreciate him. So Anthony was in good hands. As we move forward, I'd like to welcome Tamikia back to the screen to share with us some more information. Tamikia.
Thanks so much, Brenda. What Cornelius and Anthony have done just now is like a glimpse into what happens in every StoryCorps recording. And I hope that you felt it, because I started to feel some of that magic of people sharing and connecting with each other and being genuine and open and listening. Although those conversations, the ones we have at StoryCorps, are longer and there typically is not an audience, it is an opportunity to sit down, put your phone or other distractions aside, and to listen. Up now, we have another story from our collection, recorded in the StoryCorps mobile recording booth when we visited Detroit in 2017. Friends Zaire Quibena and Damon Magic Percy were active in Detroit's house music scene in the 80s and 90s. They came to StoryCorps to talk about the importance of house music and dance clubs as welcoming spaces for the LGBTQ plus community. Together, they reflect on the significance of these intimate social spaces and how they were impacted by the HIV/AIDS epidemic. They also talk about how music is still a source of healing and remembrance. Let's hear from them now.
When I first came out at 15, my first social experience was a house party. The music was soaring. And here I was, a little gay boy, big-eyed, just overwhelmed at these grown people, well-dressed, well-manicured, well-spoken, beautiful, tall, gorgeous people. And this is what I thought the gay experience was.
When I came out when I was 18, that's when I was introduced to house music and the whole community. And, I remember heavy bass and just like all of these rhythms. I mean, I know that when I walked in the club, I went straight to the dance floor. And when you came out, the sun was up, but you were sweating.
Yes.
I mean, just dancing, you just kind of, let yourself be free. Then also, you had the slow song at the end of the night.
Right. There was this potential boyfriend, a potential partner that you met.
We were dancing to Mickey Howard and Stephanie Mills and stuff like that. And I'm like, my God, he loves me. But not really. He loves me.
But for 3 minutes,
for 4 minutes and 16 seconds, we were married.
Exactly.
And I went home.
Yeah, and then the bubble bursts. I think that the tradition of this great space where we gather is still important and urgent. You and I know Black people have always had to create a space to celebrate musically,
absolutely.
period. Way before centuries ago, right? That space where we just dance freely. But the HIV/AIDS epidemic changed gay culture. It changed where we partied. It changed how we partied. It changed who owned the party.
And if we partied at all.
Exactly. And we celebrated in spite of. The bar was the CNN of our community. Before cable, we went to the bar to find out how are we all doing.
But we were all still going out
to
be free.
Come on now.
From what was going on at home. Losing people daily. It was liberation to be with your own kind, dancing, healthy, in these spaces where you belong to each other.
Right on.
And to yourself, and everybody just kind of uplifted you.
Going out and dancing wasn't just for physical pleasure. It was also to remember happier times. To hear a song, remember a moment, think about people, and hope to grab and hold on to someone who have these shared memories with you.
Yeah. looking back, it's so many people that are not here that I loved. And some days, like, I'll play music just to feel that whole euphoric experience. Like, oh, this was me and so-and-so's song. Or, oh, I remember we went to see this DJ or played this music.
I think that's maybe why we're all so close to one another, because of these experiences that nobody understands but us.
Oh, thanks, Tamikia, for bringing that to us. And I think most of you have seen actually that Damon Magic is with us in the audience. So we can give him a hello, say hello, talk to him about what it was like to record this conversation. And just say thank you. Thank you so much, Damon, for sharing your story, for you and Zaire to come together and do that, for sharing it with us and letting us continue to share it for future generations to hear this important history, to hear your voice, and for us to be able to share that together and really acknowledge and see the history.
Yeah, that was such a cool story.
Yeah. So I asked a big question earlier. Why are we even doing this? Why do stories matter? Why do we do this? Tamikia, did you see what I know some people were talking about this throughout the event?
Yeah.
What have we been talking about in the chat?
Yeah, I saw some answers in the chat to that question, just about how stories create connection. That was one of the things that I heard in that last story. I think we all have felt that moment of hearing a song and it taking us back to a person, a moment, a time. We also have answers about feeling validated in our own experiences are part of why stories matter, and being able to share and to be heard for what we have. Those are such great answers. I love hearing from the audience, and I'm so excited to have an active chat. Emily, do we have another question for them?
Of course. We just want to be talking with you all day long. So I have another reflection question. First, I want to say there's so much love for Damon in the chat. And as Cornelius and Anthony were talking, also, I felt like there must be a lot of people, Cornelius, who you have influenced and mentored and your presence has affected, because really a lot of love and appreciation for you as well in the chat. So one more question for us all. Now that we've been listening to people having these conversations, connecting, sharing and learning from one another, is there someone whose legacy you would want to honor by having a StoryCorps style conversation, by taking the time to sit down, put your phone away, and have a conversation, ask questions that you're not taking the time to do every day? So maybe that would be a mentor or ally, some of the folks you had mentioned earlier when we talked about them, someone you have maybe mentored, or just someone in your life you want to get to know better, or just really record and preserve what they have to say and what their history is. So let's just take a moment of quiet reflection together to bring those people into our minds. And if you feel comfortable, write their name in the chat, their first name, and maybe who they are to you and a question that you would ask them. But let's just take a moment of silence to really bring those people into our minds to honor them. Great. I know that for me, I have recorded StoryCorps conversations with many people in my life. That happens when you work with StoryCorps. And I interviewed my mom probably 15 years ago, and I would love to have a conversation with her again now and ask her more questions now that I'm older and have different questions that I want to ask her than I did back then. So I hope that as we come to a close this morning, everyone's feeling a little bit more connected, a little bit more inspired to listen to stories, to share your own story. And if you would like to record your story and add it to this growing archive that we have at StoryCorps, we have free tools available for you to do that. If you are able to be in the same room with the person that you'd like to record with, we recommend downloading StoryCorps' free app for your Android or iPhone. And even if you're not able to be together in person, if you're across the city, across the country, across the world from one another, StoryCorps Connect is a tool that we have that allows you to record remotely using your web browser and connecting by video, similar to the way that we're doing now. Both of those tools will walk you through that process step by step. And either way that you choose to record, you have that option to archive your recording at the Library of Congress to preserve your memories as part of our history and to be collected alongside all of these other stories we've been listening to today. We shared more about those resources in the downloadable resources, so below our screen here, where you can also find links to even more out loud stories to listen to, and that information about how you could record your conversation, and more resources and events from AARP Michigan. So speaking of, Brenda, what are some of those resources or events coming up that everyone should be looking out for?
AARP has lots of online and in-person events. Resources can be found at aarp.org. We also do a lot of fun events. And on December 14th, from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to do Let's Get It On. If you're from Detroit, that resonates. You know what that means. It's a moving Motown experience. So to register, we want you to go to aarpmi.org/Motown to register for this event. And if you go to aarp.org, you can find lots of resources around health, fraud, veteran information. There are lots of resources. Just go to the search engine and plug in what you're looking for. So at the bottom of your page, though, you should find a resource list, a listing of LGBTQ plus community organizations and entities in Michigan. So please check out that resource list. And now we're going to go back to Tamika, our host, who will share with us one last StoryCorps story.
Thank you, Brenda. Growing up in the 1960s in a housing project on the south side of Chicago, Alexis Martinez knew that she had to hide from others that she was transgender. At StoryCorps, she spoke with her daughter, Leslie Martinez Etherly, about growing up, parenthood, and now living as a woman. Let's listen.
When I came out to my mom that I was transgender, I think I was 13 or 14, and she called the police, and I always remember that when the police showed up, you know, they just laughed and told her, "You got a fag for a son, and there's nothing we can do about it." You know, so I went as macho as I could be, you know, to mask what I really was underneath. And by that time, I had become a member of a gang. Mm-hmm. People just didn't mess with me, you know, because they knew they had a fight on their hands. When I look back at it, it was almost schizophrenic because I would be wearing combat boots and blue jeans and a leather jacket, but underneath I would have like stockings and a bra. And so I remember it as a very dark period. I mean, I really didn't believe that anybody could love somebody like me.
I remember as a little girl that you would say these things like, "Well, I know that I'm not loved." I just remember growing up like, "Daddy, I love you." You know, it was just such an important thing for me to express to you how much you mattered. And it was a big to-do. I discovered some female clothes. It was sort of, you know, my uncovering the secret.
You asked me why. And I think if I had tried to cover it up, a lot of trust would have been lost between us.
It was like freedom because now I could talk to you freely about being a girl, you know, and you're the one who taught me to put on makeup.
You know, I was really torn between being a female role model and a dad. And so I said to myself, okay, well, be the best parent. Whatever it takes, however I do it, you have to look out for your baby. But one of the most difficult things for me was I was always afraid that I wouldn't be allowed to be in my granddaughter's lives. And you blew that completely out of the water, you and your husband. One of the fruits of that is, my relationship with my granddaughters. They fight with each other sometimes over whether I'm he or she,
But they're free to talk about it.
They're free to talk about it, but that to me is a miracle.
You don't have to apologize. You don't have to tiptoe. We're not going to cut you off. And that is something that I've always wanted you to, just know that you're loved.
I live this every day now. I walk down the streets as a woman, and I really am at peace with who I am. I wish I had a softer voice, maybe, but now I walk in love, and I try to live that way every day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being so present with us and sharing in the chat. It was so great to be here with you.
Yes, thanks a lot. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I enjoyed every moment of it.